Good morning. Bonjour, buenos dias. It is my pleasure to host this conversation this morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning with France's Ambassador, Philippe Etienne. So it is a pleasure to have you join us, and I want to thank everybody for the questions that you sent in ahead of our live today. We're going to start with just an introduction by our ambassador, but just to give you a little bit of his background, Philippe Etienne is an expert on the European Union and continental Europe. He has held posts in Moscow, Belgrade, Bucharest, Bonn, Berlin, and Brussels. He also has served as an advisor in the cabinet of the Minister of Foreign Affairs on several occasions. He's previously held posts in the Ministry of Europe, for Europe and Foreign Affairs, notably including Ambassador of France to Romania, Director of the Cabinet of the Minister of Foreign and European Affairs. And he has been enjoying our great state of Florida these last couple of days. So I'm going to introduce you to our guest this morning. And by the way, my name is Jacqueline Charles, and I'm the Caribbean correspondent at the Miami Herald. I guess I should have started off by introducing myself. So thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the conversation that we will be having about France's relation in this region and some of the issues that you all care most passionately about.
Hi, good morning, Jacqueline. How are you
Bonjour.
doing? How are you doing? Bonjour, buenos dias.
Buenos dias. So if you can start, I mean, introduce yourself to our audience and,
Yes.
and to talk about, you know.
Well, I've been the French ambassador to the United States for 1.5 years already. And I'm spending the whole week in Florida here, and it's a real pleasure. I'm here in Florida for the second time since I started as ambassador in Washington. And I've been here the whole week because I was in Miami and in Tampa, but now we have this extraordinary event of the launch of this team of astronauts to the International Space Station with our French astronaut, Thomas Pesquet, who will be on board. And it's really, I met him and his team last night, so I might feel and look a bit tired. It's normal. And I'm very happy to be with you, with Miami Herald and your readers, and also to speak about the Caribbean region, because France, as you probably know, is also feels as belonging to this region through our departments. Martinique, Guadeloupe, Guyana, but also our overseas territories, Saint Martin and Saint Barthélemy. And for us, it means very concrete cooperations with the countries of the region, including with the United States. And for instance, since we are in Florida, I would quote the fight against drug trafficking, which is a very, very close cooperation between the United States and France in the region, and other countries, obviously, but also the climate policy, which is really and how to cooperate to increase the resilience. We have now upcoming tomorrow and on Friday the climate summit, the climate ambition summit, called by President Biden. So it's quite important also to underline how much we cooperate with the countries of the region in fighting climate change and its effects. So those are only some examples, but I think very important examples, and I'm really happy to speak about these issues together with you, Jacqueline, and with your readers. Thank you.
Right, thank you. You know, we opened this up to our readers and we asked them, you know, what are some of the issues that are on their mind? And we heard from a diverse group of readers and concerns, many of them some of your own nationals. And so I wanted to open it up by an issue that you brought up in talking about the French Caribbean. We have more than 10 million French and Creole speakers in this region. And one of the questions that have come up is, what are the greatest concerns for France in the Caribbean region?
Well, I mentioned them already, probably mentioning drug trafficking and climate change. But I want first to say, since you mentioned the French-speaking people, that one of the not concerns but big interests and projects is to forward to advance the knowledge and teaching of French language in the region. Especially here in Florida, and I must say I was so happy yesterday morning when we inaugurated a new program, a new French American school in Tampa, in the region of Tampa Bay, in St. Petersburg and Tampa. So it's a kind of things which are very important to us. Yes, but the main concerns we might have in the region are related to its security and to its resilience, adaptation, and mitigation of climate change. Obviously, now there is a third concern I would like to quote, which is not only for the Caribbean, which is also very much for Europe, the United States, Latin America, which is a fight against the virus and COVID. And we have also a very close cooperation on this issue where we are all in the same boat.
Definitely. I mean, we've seen some reports that have come out recently in reference to French Guiana and what's happening there, with the virus. For a lot of our readers, too, there's some questions in terms of whether or not the borders are open in the French Antilles. Can you talk a little bit about that in terms of the impact of the virus when we're thinking about Guyana, Guadeloupe, Martinique?
Yes, and we have different regulations for those 5 territories. The 3, I don't know whether your readers are familiar with the difference between departments and territories.
Territories, yes.
We have 3 departments, but also 2 territories in Saint Martin and Saint Barthélemy, and each of these have different regulations concerning, because there are islands, and Guyana is not an island, of course, but it's also a separate territory. So each of them has a separate regulations, which are decided locally, which are related to the state of the circulation of the virus. But of course, as you said, Jacqueline, and it's not only the case in Guyana, but also in the other territories, but also in the French continental area, in Europe, on the European continent, we are quite concerned by the fact that the virus is still circulating. We speak about, we say it's a 3rd wave, so there are obviously restrictions to accede to those territories and departments. You must prove in general that you have a really very, very imperative motive to come. It's normal, because the priority for all of us is to fight against the virus and to have success in the fight against the virus, to speed up vaccination and so on. But of course, we hope to reopen as quickly as possible, and it will depend upon the state of the pandemics.
We've gotten quite a number of questions as it relates to trade and tourism, and I'm going to just throw 2 of them out, for you. One is from a reader who says, what can be done to improve trade between the French Antilles and Miami? There's a feeling that the French Antilles, the departments and territories, look more toward France as opposed to their closer neighbors here in the United States for trade. And then we have another question from actually a former mayor of Miami Beach, Philippe Etienne, who's a cruise entrepreneur. And he wanted to know, what is France's position on the restart of the cruise industry, and how can France influence the U.S. in that restart? We know that we do have some cruise ships that go to Martinique and Guadeloupe, and everybody's sort of looking in terms of what's going to happen in this next chapter with COVID and cruising.
No, absolutely. And to connect with your previous question, one, absolutely, both for economy and for contacts between people to people, between our societies, one crucial question is tourism, because tourism is so important also for our departments and territories. So this is the reason why I said we want to reopen as soon as possible, and as soon as the sanitary situation will allow it. Speaking about islands, of course, and there are many islands in the Caribbean region, those territories are by definition fragile, and we must be careful. But you mentioned also, Jacqueline, the cruise, and we also have the French tourism agency, Atout France, is very, very much working on how we can, independently from the COVID crisis, how we can ease with more connections, air connections, including the access of American tourists to those departments and territories. And speaking about, and tourism is really something which brings not only, again, wealth and so more security in general, but also brings contacts between the people. It's really important. But your question about trade is a great question. And the first time I was in Miami, we opened a French tech hub. We have in Florida many a vibrant French ecosystem, including in high techs, and we have also a big potential in our Caribbean departments. And I think it's really, we have a base to act and to develop not only trade, but also investments and technological and higher education connections. By the way, we have also interesting programs already in place, thanks to the European Union, because the three departments, Martinique, Guadeloupe, and Guyana belong to the European Union as such, because they are departments. And so we have EU programs funded by member states, including France, to establish and to develop exchange of students between those departments and the neighboring countries and in the Caribbean. So yes, definitely, as your readers have put it, we want to develop these flows, and we will be happy to cooperate with our partners in Florida.
Well, great. So we're going to leave the French Antilles for a minute, and we're going to go a little bit closer to home, Cuba and Nicaragua. We've got a couple of questions from our readers on these two particular places. Cuba, you have a number of investments, but the questions that we've gotten concerning Cuba is, how does Washington view the official relationship between Paris and Havana? What is France's position regarding human rights violation in Cuba? Investing more in Cuba will improve the human rights problems, that they've been asking. And if there are any projects you all have in mind to strengthen the rule of law in Cuba?
Well, this is also obviously a great question, because Cuba is such an important country also in the region. And we have a common European Union policy towards Cuba, and France is, of course, very active in defining and promoting and implementing this policy. And this approach by the European Union wants to be well coordinated between European countries, as I said, but also balanced, which of course is based on dialogue and cooperation. But as you said, the respect for human rights is absolutely crucial in this respect, and we speak very, very frankly with the Cuban authorities about this, and this and critical engagement, if I may say so, is a core issue in our relations between the European Union and Cuba, together with development cooperation issues and response to the global challenges I mentioned before.
Great. Most people don't even know that France has been involved in Nicaragua, especially in terms of reforms of the justice system. And so we have a question from a reader, Sandra, and she wanted to know, will the French government join the international community in the support and oversight of a free, democratic, and transparent election process this November in Nicaragua? And if you can talk a little bit about what you all do in Nicaragua.
Well, I'm not either a specialist of Nicaragua. But I'm aware there is this issue and this prospect, and we have embassies in all those countries. I can assure you that we are also very active in promoting the same values and in which are democratic values in all our partner countries in Central America and including in the Caribbean. So we are indeed following this development very, very carefully also in Nicaragua.
Okay, great. So now we're going to go back to the Caribbean, the English-speaking Caribbean mostly for now. So one of the things of my job is to cover the issues in the region. And I remember before COVID, there were a lot of back and forth diplomatic relations, a budding relationship, we can say, with CARICOM and Martinique. And we just recently saw some cooperation there with the ongoing explosion of the volcano in St. Vincent. And we received many questions from readers who wanted to know a little bit more. And it was obvious to me that they have been following this because there were also some very specific questions. And we will start with the relationship. What is the relationship between France and CARICOM? And is there any role for France in the whole regional integration movement of CARICOM, Caribbean countries?
No, of course. And for us, CARICOM is a very important partner, by the way, again, not only of France as such, but of the European Union in general. I was myself, many years, I served in Brussels as a representative of France to the European Union. And definitely CARICOM is an important partner. In general, the European Union is maybe the most sophisticated, developed form of regional integration, and we support very much, not only here in this region, but in other parts of the world, regional integration organizations. But the other reason, obviously, why CARICOM is a very important partner is because we are for France, because we are here in the region. And you mentioned the volcano in St. Vincent, and of course, this has motivated a lot of actions of solidarity around the world, and especially here in this region. And we, as Europeans, we have immediately decided to help also financial humanitarian aid. We want to mobilize to help the people at St. Vincent, but also, as I said in my introduction, we think it's one of the most important issues of cooperation with CARICOM and its member countries is the fight against the effects of climate change. Finally, we have decided decided to increase the people-to-people. We try to increase them as much as possible between CARICOM countries and our own departments. And I mentioned the cooperation between universities, which is probably establishing more contact from people to people, including having in our universities in Martinique, the possibility to having students from other partner countries. I think that we, for the consequences of the explosion of the volcano in St. Vincent de Soufrière, the EU awarded not far from close to $1 million right away. But we are following this humanitarian and material situation very, very closely.
So there was a lot of interest in terms of French investment further, in the region, like countries like Trinidad and Tobago. But we also have a question from Joseph, who wanted to know specifically, how do you see the future of energy development, renewable petroleum and natural gas in the region, including in some of these countries, like Guyana? Could the region supply most of this? Well, that's more specific, but you've talked about climate change. We know that British Guyana, which is the current Guyana, has been out on the forefront of this. You've been working with Caribbean countries. Martinique, several years ago, went into a partnership with Dominica where they were trying to get alternative energy. Do you have any specific thoughts about how France can be more involved in this whole energy issue in this region?
Well, I would say that we consider that we are globally in an energy and climate transition in all regions of the world, which means, of course, we need energy for economic development, and we need also to organize this transition to shift to move to lower or low carbon or zero carbon emissions. So one of the big issue we have, considering the use of local resources, is how we can cooperate with the countries of the region to help them in their strategies to foster their development while advancing these transition policies in a very concrete way. And one of the things we have been doing with the Bank for Inter-American Development Bank is that our agency, French Agency for Development, has co-funded a fund with the regional bank to decarbonize the energy and the production and the economies. I think, for instance, in Costa Rica, we have a good cooperation, speaking not only about Caribbean and Central, but also Central America. So this is the of course the difficulty, but also the possibility. We think it is possible. It will be discussed tomorrow and Friday at this summit, I'm sure, to organize these transitions while using, for instance, gas will of course be continued to be used in this transition period, and we must only ensure that this transition is going forward, because otherwise we will never reach our goals under the Paris Climate Accord. We have to succeed in limiting the global warming.
Okay. Outside of sometimes well-publicized humanitarian support, such as the 2010 Haiti earthquake, what role does the European Union play in regard to the Caribbean states? How does it interact with EU member states such as France, which may still have historical influence over some of those territories?
Well, it's indeed a great question, because people do not understand always very easily from outside the European Union, and sometimes even inside the European Union, but mostly outside our partners, the distribution of roles between the European Union as such and its member states. France is one of the most important, of course, member states of the EU, one of the 6 founding members, and we are also one of the most important financial contributors to the EU budget. But on the top of that, we add our own national policies, and the French departments in the Caribbean, being part of the European Union, they benefit, of course, from also from funds of the European Union, and those funds are partly targeting cooperation between our departments and the neighboring countries. So we try to have a distribution of roles which makes sense. And in my answers to your questions, Jacqueline, sometimes I said it is more the EU which is acting as such, which doesn't mean that France is not active. France then is very, very active in the EU institutions, and is very active as a member of the EU. Or more nationally, we have also our own national actions. And all this, you must add the European contribution to the national French contributions, and we try to be very consistent and strong. And definitely inside the EU, together with Spain, for instance, is a strong advocate of the always more cooperation between the European Union and this region. France is really, because we are here, we feel part of the region. It's really a driver of more involvement of the European nations and the European Union in the region. And we consider the integration of our territories in the regional environment as a very decisive, very important part of our policy, including towards the European Union policies.
And speaking more specifically about France, I'm going to put these two questions out. One is, how can the Florida Consulate Office assist you in your mission in the Caribbean? And then what role do you see France playing in the post-COVID recovery period in this region in terms of investment and debt restructuring? As you know, this is a huge issue for Caribbean countries in terms of what has happened with COVID in their economies.
First, I was smiling because the question about our consulate is very relevant, because our consul general is with me in this room. And we have not only a consulate general in Miami, a very, very active one, but also 3 honorary consuls. One of them, I was with him in Tampa, but now I am with our honorary consul in Orlando. We have also, I think, one in Jacksonville. So this consular network, French consular network in Florida, is very, very important for us. And by the way, our Miami consulate is also competent, I think, for Puerto Rico, but also for Bahamas. Coming to the question on COVID and what can we do, I think that and debt, the issue of debt, it's really important. We have 2 priorities here, I think, which are the vaccination to tackle the pandemics itself, and to speed the vaccination. And our President Macron, was really, with other European leaders, at the forefront last year when we created COVAX, and more generally initiatives to speed up and to ensure equal access from all countries in the world to vaccines, treatments, tests, and also to reinforce their healthcare systems. So now we think that we must accelerate this because we are all in together, all countries in the world, and Latin America, Caribbean, we must also help those countries to get vaccines, not only through generous fundings to COVAX, but also more and more probably in sharing doses. The issue of debt is also very crucial. And last year in G20, my country was at the origin of an initiative to decide, which was decided, but it is for us only a first step, the moratorium on the payment of their debt by a number, I think more than 70 countries in the world, the ones who have more difficulties. Because as you said, as your reader says, the weight of the debt is absolutely difficult and impossible to bear alone. When you have the pandemics and you have to prioritize the fight against the virus and then the recovery of your economy. So we will definitely, France is at the forefront in G20, but also as the IMF, and we have the Paris Club, which is also competent for handling the foreign debts. We are really at the forefront for having a ambitious policy to tackle this debt issue. But of course, the most important is that we are all in the world, we are all hit by these pandemics, and we must think of all our losses across our societies, all the people we lost, and we suffer all from these pandemics together. It's really a global challenge, and we cannot forget. We cannot look only at our countries, even if France itself is suffering still very much from it. We have to look at all sufferings all over the world, including the US, but also in the Caribbean region.
Exactly. So prior to us starting, we spoke about Haiti, former French colony, where there's the language, the cultural influences, and one of the things definitely you pointed out was you're not the ambassador of France to Haiti, but I have to tell you that probably more than half of the questions that we received from our readers was very much about Haiti, given France's role. And this came up just last month with members of Congress that were asking, well, where is France and what is France doing in terms of the ongoing political impasse and raging insecurity? Today on the streets of Port-au-Prince, there are hardly any traffic. The Catholic Church yesterday announced a 3-day work stoppage to once again protest and demand the release of 10 individuals two of whom are French nationals. One is a priest, one is a nun. So the questions we have, and they were all along the same lines, and to the best of your your ability, I'm just going to put them, out there. So we've received them along the lines of France's position on the current political impasse and constitutional crisis in Haiti, the issue of reparations, the 150 million francs that Haiti paid, and whether and what sort of conversations or France is having, with the government in respect to this kidnapping. And let me just add this. We had the Haitian media in the last few days played the recordings of one of the gang leaders that is involved in this kidnapping. And in those conversations, he specifically talked about France and blamed France for the situation that, quote unquote, we are in. So we're seeing this coming up, and even some of your own nationals. Mathieu, what is our government's official position on the recent kidnapping of the French nuns and priests in Haiti, and how can this crisis be turned around quickly, and who should play a key role?
No, of course, Haiti is, for the reasons you mentioned, a very, very important country and partner for France. And we have been very, very active on Haiti. I don't think you have to ask where is France, because we are, just to give you an example, the United Nations, Security Council did issue a statement, and last March, 1 month ago, and France is a permanent member of the UNSC, and we are very, very, of course, concerned by this protracted political, constitutional, humanitarian security crisis in Haiti. I was myself the Assistant Secretary for Development Aid and International Cooperation 15 years ago, and I visited Haiti 2 times, and I visited Port-au-Prince and Jacmel, I remember, and it's really, I had the feeling that we have incredible people there living there, and there is such a potential, but there is this series of crises, and of course, one of the issue I mentioned is a security issue, and you cannot stabilize, develop a country without with such an insecurity. And since you ask, of course, the deteriorating security situation is also leading to the activities, criminal activities, gang-related activities, and kidnappings. And you mentioned rightly that 2 French citizens recently have been with others kidnapped, and it's absolutely unacceptable. I cannot speak in details about such situations for obvious reasons when it's about hostage taking, but it's absolutely unacceptable, and we must of course be as active as possible to help Haiti to find solutions. And
is France willing to help with its military or technology to assist Haiti, given the fact you all do have a military in this region?
We think it's the only solutions, of course, is that all stakeholders, in particular all political stakeholders in Haiti itself, set aside the differences, and we in particular, you mentioned this, I think, Jacqueline, organize elections in a way that those elections take place in a peaceful environment, and the result is accepted by everybody. So this is, we are with other partners, and I mentioned the United Nations dimension, of course, which is important for us, but also in cooperation with other international partners. We are really there to help Haiti, of course.
Speaking of the UN, one of our readers, actually, who's been paying very close attention, wrote, Catherine Broadhurst, French representative at the UN Security Council, has told the Haitian president that the gangs have taken control of several areas in Port-au-Prince and render life miserable for Haitian citizens. On such an account, elections are not impossible. Like, this is from the reader because she did not say this. I watched that. But the reader wanted to know, can the French offer technological help to help trace the kidnappers and bring them to justice as a gesture of French government support for Haiti and Haitians?
Well, it's a good question. I have no. When I told you before, I'm not there, and I'm not following closely the different types of cooperation we can offer. I don't know whether we could develop this, but those issues with hostage taking are, I know by experience, also in other contexts, are very delicate. We don't speak very much publicly about them, and even if I had information, which is not the case, I couldn't give them, obviously, because we want to be efficient in those cases. But yes, we can imagine all sorts of technical cooperations. We do it with different countries in the world to improve the security policy. I don't know whether this precise need can be satisfied, but thank you for the question anyway.
So I want to wrap up. This year is the 200th anniversary of the death of Napoleon Bonaparte. And there's an interesting debate in and out of France in terms of, was he the great? I myself, being interested in Haiti, what I have found is that Haiti and the Haitian Revolution has been missing from the conversation of Napoleon. And especially when we think of 1799, we think about the Battle of Vertier, which was the decisive battle in that revolution. And and people have asked me, should we be looking at Napoleon through today's lenses? But yet many of his achievements are still standing. So I wanted to get two thoughts from you. One, why do you think that Haiti is sort of missing from this conversation about Napoleon? And from your perspective, what is this debate all about? I mean, he's been dead for 200 years.
Well, it's a good question. I remember when I was a kid at school, I had to write a dissertation on whether Napoleon finally was a positive character in our history who followed up on the heritage of the French revolutions, freedoms, and so on, or whether he made he ruled in such a way to suppress the freedoms and the rights gained under the French Revolution. And what you say, I don't think the revolution in Haiti and the independence fight for the independence of Haiti is forgotten in this. Well, I am not an historian, but I've read a lot of things about it. It's one of the major events which took place during Napoleon's period and in this region, and definitely it was and it is still in the history a very, very important development, which has shown the way to many other countries in the region, in this hemisphere. This second 200th anniversary of the death of Napoleon, of course, would have been if we had not had the COVID pandemics celebrated in different ways, because as you know, he died in St. Helena, which is a very, very far away off South African coasts, and there is a whole there would be a whole series of events associated to this event with many in-person gatherings and so on. But I think that this theme of Napoleon's heritage remains very, very actual, including in all countries of Europe. You have not one country in Europe who has not taken part in a way or in another to Napoleon wars. And you can sit in a place where Napoleon is still very popular, and then go to the neighboring country where it's very unpopular because of what happened and the wars and the victims of the wars. Napoleon, not only in France, but of course in particular in France, is still very, very, very present in the collective awareness in France, in Europe, and worldwide. And everything he left. For instance, the civil code is still being implemented, not only in France but in many countries. Is looked at as a part of an heritage or a whole of things he left, where you have different elements, and it's for every historian and every citizen to judge then how he finds it finally. But Haiti is definitely a very important part of this, of course.
Yeah, so it's just interesting because it's not regarded as one of the battles that he lost. As a couple of historians said to me, he wasn't there. so it's very interesting. But when you look at the context, and yes, the role that it played. One last question before I just ask you, we're going to wrap up, and when we wrap up, some closing remarks from you and anything specific about, in terms of French relations going forward. But I know that my readers and my followers are going to kill me if I don't put this question out there. It's going to put you a little bit on the spot, but I have to tell you, every other question we got about Haiti was on this issue of reparations. And do you see France ever sort of taking up that issue or even repaying it?
Well, what I can say that we are, Haiti is the country in the hemisphere which is the country where we develop as we have been developing for years, our development aid and assistance. So I understand the question, of course, which I know is a very frequently asked, but the fact is that we have only one country in this hemisphere which is considering as a priority partner of our overseas development assistance policy, which is Haiti. All the others are in Africa actually, and or most of the others, maybe one of them in Southeastern Asia, but really the bulk of our development assistance is in Africa, with one very important exception, which is Haiti. So we will continue to do our utmost to develop our cooperation with Haiti and for the young people in Haiti, for their development and their future.
All right, Ambassador Etienne, I want to thank you so much for agreeing to do this and allowing me to put you on the spot. Hopefully our followers, our readers, they got something out of this. There was a suggestion, by the way, that came in about all of the Francophone countries in the Caribbean having a yearly roundtable event to talk about language and culture. I know that Dominica celebrates the Creole language, but, this reader thinks that we should do something much broader.
A great idea, not only with French, but also with other languages. The diversity and Creole cultures have given some of our best French writing writers. So it's really important to not only to celebrate, but also to benefit from this exchange. And thank you for your understanding, since I didn't understand precisely to all questions. I did my best.
No, I think it was fine. And I invite you to give us some closing remarks and anything specific that you want to say in terms of French cooperation going forward, or issues, in terms of this region, the Caribbean and Central America, and anything that we should be looking forward to.
No, le agradezco muchísimo para la invitación, para este diálogo con vosotros. Quizás la próxima vez vamos a hablar también un poquito en español con usted, et en français aussi d'ailleurs. So my conclusion would be that, and it is the meaning and the goal of my presence here in Florida, and I hope to come back as often as possible to this place, great place which is Florida, with its different communities, including Haitian, but also people from different places in Latin America, in the Caribbean. We want really to develop this partnership between France and Caribbean, based on our own departments, as we mentioned, and our territories, but also with the United States, and especially with Florida and with its with all stakeholders, economy, but also society, universities, technology. We want to also we want to consider Florida as we do already in some areas. I mentioned the fight against drug trafficking, but we want to be really a partner of Florida and of the United States also in those in those priority goals like the fight against climate change in the region, or the fight for security in the region, or the fight against the virus, and so on and so on. This is what I wish, and I will, as ambassador here, I will try to contribute to advancing this goal.
Well, thank you. And I look forward to learning more about specifically the drug trafficking and what are some of the initiatives that you all will be putting forward there, and any other initiatives that are specific that our readers will be interested in. And thank you so very much. And congratulations on the NASA launch. It has been delayed, but it's great to think about France and space. It definitely shows it's not just about the United States in space or the Russians.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Jacqueline. Thank you, and hello to your readers. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for having me today.
All right. Merci and
merci.
Enchanté. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Hopefully you learned a little bit more about France's relationship here. I am sorry that we were not able to get to all of your questions, but hopefully you continue to follow us at the Miami Herald, and you can follow me at Jackie Charles on Twitter, or you can also go to my Facebook page, as well as the Miami Herald Facebook page as well. Thank you very much.